Good morning. Is this working? Okay. Welcome. Happy International Women's Day. So first, when you're done eating and you're exiting, you can just leave your dishes in the kitchen. Thank you to Lemon Press for catering. Amazing breakfast. So I just wanted to welcome everybody. I'm Christy Ferrantello with the Nantucket Chamber of Commerce. And Marina and I sat down in January and we're thinking, what can we do to help women on Nantucket? And both of us thought we need to celebrate International Women's Day. So this kind of brainchild came about. We met with Melissa Murphy and Karen, which is here somewhere. Stand up. Where'd she just go? She just step out. And they really helped us kind of plant the idea to work with Petticoat Row, Nantucket Women in Business, which I saw a couple of you here as well. So we're just very excited for this event, and I'm going to turn it over to Denise Cronau, our moderator, to introduce our panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Christy, and thanks to the Chamber and to Lemon Press and to Dreamland and to Marina for making all of this happen. Elizabeth Barrett Browning said it best, light tomorrow with today. And that's what we'll start our day with this morning. And to that end, I don't introduce anyone because they'll introduce themselves so much better than I can. So I'll ask the panel to please take a seat, and then I'll hand you the microphone, and then you'll all introduce yourselves. And also because I'm fundamentally lazy, so why should I do the work? This panel didn't know what they were signing up for when I moderated it. Over to you. Just introduce yourself. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. I'm Cecil Barron Jensen. I'm the Executive Director of Remain Nantucket.
Is there anything you want to share with the group as a first thought?
First thought. Well, I think it's awesome that we're celebrating International Women's Day here on Nantucket, because I was told when I first moved to Nantucket by my step-grandmother, who lived out in Sconset at the time. She's like, well, you know, I don't know about the men, but the women on Nantucket are amazing.
Oh, I like that. Good morning. I'm Joanna Roach, and I am the Executive Director of the Green Spa Network and also a Business Development Consultant, primarily in the area of wellness, and I have been doing this for a very long time. And I am completely impressed with the community of women on Nantucket. It's really, I think, unparalleled in terms of other places where I've lived and participated in these kinds of things, and it is a pleasure to be here.
Hello, my name is Daria Afshari. I'm owner of Daria Salon and Spa, as well as Lemon Press, partners with Rachel Afshari. And I agree. I mean, we have an amazing group of women, and how we all got here with children and jobs at 8:30 in the morning on time with coffee in hand is pretty impressive. So.
Good morning, everyone. Nice to see you guys. My name is Tracy Long. I'm the general manager out at Cisco Brewers. And I think the first thought for the day would just be, it's really nice to do something new and talk to everybody and see you guys. So cheers.
Hi, I'm Lynn Beeger. I own Roasted General Store. I'm also a yoga teacher, which I've been doing almost 20 years. I hate to say how old I am. And I'm super psyched because I remember so vividly when I was opening up my yoga studio and I was doing it by myself, and I would go meet with owners of buildings and realtors. And because I was a woman and I didn't have like a male backer or a male partner, that it was really, really hard for me to get my real estate space. So it's amazing to see this community of women and how supportive and awesome it is. So thank you for the invite.
As you can see, I'm not too elegant with how I have to walk in front of people to get back to the microphone. So one of the things that I love about this International Women's Day theme in particular, Balance for Better, is that we can make it applicable on so many levels, right? You can talk about it globally. You can talk about it for your own organization. You can talk about it for you personally. What does Balance for Better mean for you personally? And what does it mean for you personally now? Because now is not always. Right? So what you might need for Balance for Better now might not be what you needed 6 months ago or need a year from now. So keep that in mind as we go through the discussion. But now we're going to do the most important point. So everybody ready? We're going to do a lightning round, and you're going to find out amazing things about our panelists. Amazing. So you're going to have to shout because we don't have 5 microphones, but I'm guessing this group can be loud. I'm hoping, fingers crossed. Coffee or tea?
Tea.
Hot chocolate.
See? Cats or dogs? Yankees or Red Sox?
Red Sox.
No. Mountains or beach?
Beach.
Okay. If you say mountains, it's like, okay, I'm sorry for you. All right. So I think it's always nice to have a way to get to know a little bit about the people that you're about to hear from. Everyone in the room who owns your own business, please stand up. Woohoo! Now you may sit down. You'll get to stand up again, I promise. Everyone in the room who manages other people, please stand up. Now you can sit down again. And I'm implying by managing other people that you also hire other people, because hiring other people is part of how we get balance for better, right? It's part of the inclusiveness. How do we include? Research shows that we hire people that are exactly like ourselves. And how do I know this? I was the chief diversity officer for Siemens AG before I retired 4 years ago. And what that meant was it was up to me and my team to make sure that Siemens had inclusive hiring policies in the 190 countries we did business for the 400,000 employees that we had around the world. So there's lots of research around hiring where it's very easy to hire someone who looks just like you and acts just like you. They're the easiest people on the planet to manage. The point, though, is that diverse teams outperform not homogenous teams by a lot. Not in the beginning, because they have to figure out how to talk to each other, but over time, they're much more creative. And that's the stories we're going to hear from our team today. So I had a whole bunch of prepared questions, and because they're all A students, they all prepared answers. And rather than do that, I'm going to open it up immediately to the audience for you to ask questions. See, this is how I only get to moderate this panel once, because they're like, Denise, no, we're not having that again. No, we're cured. So not only is it 8 o'clock in the morning, and she made us do homework, and then she didn't use it. Yeah. I had the same problem in my family, to be honest. So who would like to ask a question? Melissa. Oh, and please state your name and anything else you want to say.
Okay. Good morning. I'm Melissa Murphy. I own 2 businesses. And I would love to hear, this may have been one of the prepared questions, but I love the theme of balance for better. I actually somewhat think the word balance is a bit of a misnomer and can be a word that women use to shame themselves. We're always searching for balance, and we never quite find it. So I'd be really curious to hear balance, your perspective on it as women in business and how you balance your business with your personal lives.
Thanks, Melissa. Who would like this, Cecil?
Oh, sure. Thank you. Well, actually, Melissa, that was the very first thing I thought of when I heard the hashtag balance for better, because I could talk for probably, until this time tomorrow about how I have struggled to find balance in my home work life always. And it's always a little bit different. I remember way back in the 90s when I was working at the Nantucket Historical Association, and my kids were really young. Grace was just 3 months old when I started there, but just so you know, she's now 23, so it's a long time ago. But so that balance thing was really hard then. And then at the later part of my career, working at the Artist Association, or even now at Remain, my kids were older, they needed less of me. So I tended to dive even deeper into the work side of that scale. And I had to really pull back for my own personal health to make sure that I wasn't just working. So I honestly, see, there you go, 5 minutes, and I've already been talking about it. But so that is an issue that I've struggled with, and I think all women struggle with. But then I dove into to see what this hashtag Balance for Better actually is, and what they were talking about was more about the balance of diversity in the workplace, and whether it was women versus men, or just a diverse workplace, because as Denise said, a diverse workplace is actually a really productive and wonderful place to work. And so then I really went, halt, because truthfully, I've lived my life around women. When I was in grade 3, I went to an all-girls school, and I stayed there until the end of my primary education. Then I went to Middlebury College, where there was actually more women than men at Middlebury at that time, just a small percentage, but very powerful women. And then I jumped into a career in publishing, which again is dominated by women. My bosses, the top editors, especially, can I diverse? I'm sorry, I could talk for days. Okay. Especially one of the newspapers in Toronto was very male dominated, but most of my colleagues were women. And then, of course, you all know I've had a career in nonprofits out here, which again is very dominated by women. So I really have been thick with women, which is great. But that diversity of making sure that I'm trying to hire men and trying to hire people that are not me has been an important part of my career as an executive director.
Excellent, thank you. Now I'm going to ask Tracy to answer the same question.
About balance specifically?
As Melissa asked, or whatever you want to. You know what? We're freeform, so change it.
I think for me personally, Cecil touched on, personal health at work, and it's, you can throw yourself into something and it becomes very heroic. And especially in Nantucket, we have such a rich heritage of hard work, for the past 300 years, and we can all share that. And I think that that's really reflected in our community and the different kinds of jobs that everybody does. And we have so much opportunity here to work hard, which is amazing. A lot of people in other communities don't have that in the United States and in the rest of the world. So this heroicism that you exhibit, you then lose your own personal identity because your identity is work. And then you turn around and you say, wow, I'm actually kind of a loser because I thought I was so cool working so hard. And that would be, your personality. Or you kind of step back for a minute and you're like, wow, there's no balance here. Work is the only thing that I have. And I should probably get a hobby or, I don't know, knitting. For me personally, on my journey thus far, balance has really been about routine and how the power of routine, while some people may think that it's mundane or, it kind of hinders you in a way, it really frees up time for you to be creative and then be yourself. I have a personal routine I go through every morning. I have a personal routine in the bathroom that I do before we step out onto the floor, kind of get it all together. So I would say that, finding your personal routine and where it can give and take with your personal life and with your work life, you shouldn't not socialize, but that if you take an extra hour to socialize, you still are going to want to be there on time, go through your routine, work out for half an hour, shower, go to work. So balance for me is really, really about being strict about my routine every day.
Thank you, Tracy. Next question. All the way in the back. Sure, Cavil. I'll run all the way back there. That's why I wore sneakers.
Good morning. I'm Cavell. I'm with Sustainable Nantucket. My question is for Daria. Thanks. My question is for Daria. So for me, I worked 11 years for NIR doing hospitality. So my job was to create experience for people. At the end of the day, after 5, I'd be a total bitch. Didn't want to talk to anyone. So for you, Daria, I want to find out, how do you do it? You have a beauty salon. You also have a restaurant. How do you balance those along with your personal life, being a wife, a mom, and a business owner?
Well, I think everyone here knows that you're not going to like every answer that you're going to hear today. But I think that balance is a part of your life where it's a goal. you strive to achieve it. And sometimes you can't get there, and you can't really punish yourself for not getting there all the time. At the end of the day, we all have mortgages and responsibilities, and priority is one of the questions. And that's a very, very, I think that comes into line with balance. And you have to prioritize what is important. And sometimes your family needs you more. Sometimes your business needs you more. And sometimes you need yourself. And when you are in touch with yourself and you know what you need, and you know, and you're in connection with everyone around you, you know what they need at that time. And that's a very strong attribute that I think all women have, and men, I'm sure. I don't know how they feel, but I know that we have a lot to balance as women. And we have this intuitive way of doing it. And priority one is your mental health, always. And you have no other choice but to be strong in that aspect of your life. So to answer your question, I don't do it well all the time, but I look around and see who needs me the most after my mental health. And I address that with kid gloves. And I love it and nurture it, because every part of my life needs my attention, right? Every part of our life needs our attention. So we just have to really have an open eye and see and realize that, like, if you are not having a good day, that you have to check that at the door, because it's only going to make your next day harder and harder. And that's the way I live my life, honestly. So I don't know if that answers your question, but thank you.
Joanna, I have a question for you. See, I cheat because I have the microphone. We all have been on a journey, and you've done a lot of amazing things. I've had the advantage of seeing your resume, and she's done a ton of amazing things. What advice would you give yourself 20 years ago in terms of, I worried about that then, and now,
That is a good question, and I thought about this. I think there's a couple of different things. I think number one, change is inevitable, right? You can't hang on to anything too tightly. Who you are as a person at 20 is different than who you are as a person at 50. And when you hang on to things too tightly, you deny yourself the opportunity to grow. And I think that that's something I would have told myself when I was younger. I also think I would have told myself to find more mentors, because I think that I have been really fortunate to have some incredible mentors, both men and women. But I think that at 20, you kind of think you can do it all yourself. And that's also not true, right? You have to build that tribe of people around you. And I don't know, at some point, somebody said to me, you're only as good as the 6 people you surround yourself with and spend the most time with. And when you really use that filter, if those 6 people are people who raise you up and support you and teach you new things, then you grow. And I think that, that's helpful for all of us. But change is inevitable.
Love that. I'm reflecting on Joanna's 6 people who surround me, and I'm surrounded by 2 dogs, so I've got it set. Jen. Catch. No.
Okay, Joanna, that answer was beautiful, and I feel like I can rest in it for a little bit, frankly. And also my question starts from there, which is, one of this balance for better, this diverse and inclusive workforce that we talk about, or that this hashtag is about. It really is the recognition that elsewhere, in a lot of places, you don't have a balance of women. You have a predominantly heavy male workforce, especially in positions of power. We, on Nantucket, we are very fortunate and to have a lot of really powerful entrepreneurs who make their own way. So with that in mind, how do you then, or have you found yourself in a position to be a mentor, to hold that door open for the women coming behind you? And how do you do that?
Sorry, I was distracted. Poor Carolyn sitting there in the spotlight. She's the only one with the sun full on her face, and I was hoping to make her more comfortable versus just standing in front of the sun. Lynn. Oh, you asked. I'm sorry. Did you?
Anybody. I asked about mentorship.
That is Lynn.
Thanks.
I'm so subtle.
Settle like a freight train. I love that. So I love that question because I remember when I first wanted to teach yoga and I had a job at Fidelity Investments. And my mom said it was a horrible idea. Then had my sister call me up, who's like a medical doctor. And it's like, well, I know it's a horrible idea because she's been in medical school and all these other schools forever. And so I didn't have a mentor because I didn't know anyone that was teaching yoga full time. It was right sort of on this cusp mark. So I had mentors that weren't necessarily in my business. My chiropractor was a mentor to me, and I learned a ton about anatomy in the body and had nothing to do necessarily with running a yoga studio. I worked with a Rolfer up in Maine for a long time, who was a mentor to me. And then my role for over 10 years then became mentoring other teachers. So I didn't have people necessarily in my field that were my mentors, but I would take information from all these different areas and then gather it. And then I would spend 200 hours with these teachers, training them to become teachers and sort of disseminate information back to them. And to be honest, I'm still doing that because I still get calls, and lots of them, and messages from people that say, I need your ear, I need an opinion, or should I be worried about this? And so hopefully that never ends. And your mentors could be, going to the farm and like talking to the horses. I know that sounds really weird, but like in the middle of the summer, I'm like, I just want to go hang out with a horse and just be in that element or be by the water. And so it doesn't have to be someone that's like in your exact thing. It's just people that give you support or places that give you support, whether that's a person or a place, this amazing island. So I think sometimes we have to look beyond like our immediate network of like, who knows what you're doing? Because sometimes we're blazing a trail and we're out in unknown territory. So we need to go out and get information that someone else doesn't even know, and that can be helpful too.
Thank you. And Lynn raised so many great points there, and I just want to just highlight a couple of them. I've been working since dinosaurs roamed the earth, and I was often the only one of me in the room. Mostly it was men, or it was just mostly people who were different. And I would often get asked, Denise, what's it like to be a CEO as a woman? I said, well, I don't know how to be it the other way. So do you want to know how it is to be as Denise? And I think that's something to keep in mind. What you are as you is enough. It doesn't need to be as somebody else or compared to somebody else. The second piece of what Lynn's talking about is actually listening. When I've run companies, and when we'd have big team meetings, and I'd see everybody talking over each other. And after about half an hour, I would ask, what's the opposite of talking? And everybody would look at me like, oh my God, she's in charge and she's stupid. She doesn't know what the opposite of talking is. And I'd wait, and they would say, well, listening, of course. I said, well, watching the room, it's actually waiting to talk, because not a single one of you have built on what the other person said. And at that point, I made the word but forbidden. Denise, that's a beautiful sweater, but it would be better if it was red. What have I heard? You don't like my sweater. Denise, that's a beautiful sweater, and if it was red, it would also be fabulous. Thank you. I'm a happy bunny now. So I wouldn't let the word but be I would always ask the person who is speaking to build on, even if they contradicted, to build on what the former person said, which forced them to listen for content and not just to wait to talk. Next question, please. Oh, please don't make me go to my set questions for these guys. They prepared them. That'll be boring. Let's see. Who do I think has a question? Oh, thank you. I was just about to pick on somebody, so you saved them. Please introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Claudia, and I'm just curious if any of you have a favorite book about business that you would recommend.
Racy. Start with Tracy, and I'll all of you answer that.
Claudia, definitely Danny Meyer's book. It's Moving the Salt Shaker. Setting the Table. There we go. There's a salt shaker on the front.
I'm reading one currently, well, almost done. Switch by Heath Brothers, Dan Heath and John Heath. Yeah, fabulous. Love it. What's it about, Daria? It's basically about how to. Let me think about that for a second. It's how to make change effectively in a positive way, and how to recognize who you're making the changes with and for. Kind of like the elephant in the rider, and kind of, I don't know. If you want me to elaborate, it's going to take some time. It's a little early. Sorry.
So before the Heath brothers, who both worked for Fast Company, there was a guy named Tom Peters who wrote a book called In Search of Wow. And he sort of inspired the Heath brothers, and also a guy named Seth Godin who wrote a book called Purple Cow. And those books are incredibly inspiring, but also anything by Malcolm Gladwell, right? I think he really pushes the envelope of how we think, and that whole 10,000 hours metaphor is so, I think, pertinent to what we're talking about today, how we can be our best selves, what is balance for better. Anything that is worth doing well, you need to work hard at. 10,000 hours. Yeah, so this is something I tell my kids all the time, especially the one who wants to be an NFL player. You have to do something 10,000 hours to be an expert, right? And that's his sort of rule of thumb. And that book was really incredible.
The book Good to Great. I'm sure a lot of you have read that. It's an oldish book. But I've heard Jim Collins speak I've been privileged enough to hear him speak a couple of times. And it's just so dynamic and so fascinating. And for those of you that don't know Good to Great, it's what makes a good company a great company. And he sort of pulled apart to see what some of the special things were that were common in companies that were good and then became great.
So I'm a big Tony Robbins fan because I love sort of the psychological component to business. So I really enjoy his podcasts and his talks that he does with leaders. And I think what's so brilliant about Tony is he picks people that have nothing to do with his business, that are like way out on these far, far limbs. And you see similarities, but he also will bring people in that are just have been so down on their chips, like at the bottom of their barrel, like, you know, something got banned or something got outlawed, and how they've come back or how they've turned things around. And Tony does a lot of work around his own priming and around his own mental state, which I think as a business owner is so important, especially as women dealing with adrenal fatigue and thyroid issues and hormonal stuff, to really look at his thing is really looking at wellness as a main building block to your success. So it's not about having a business success, because if it's just your business that's successful, chances are your immune system or your adrenal system or thyroid system is just in complete blowout. But how is that wellness a pillar of your overall success? And that I'm fanatical about. Yeah, thanks.
The book I liked the most, or stuck with me the longest, was Clay Christensen's How Will You Measure Your Life? And it's actually a business book. And it's just so thoughtfully written. And he's written many, many business books about disruptive business and disruptive things. And I can really identify with what Lynn said, because in 2006, I just completely burnt out and walked away from my CEO job. I was running a $100 million business, and I just walked away from it because I was exhausted. I was living in New York. I was working for Siemens. I had to, for example, I was the chairman of our board of our team in India. So I would go to India for a 4-hour meeting from New York. I'd leave Saturday afternoon, be back in the office by 8:30 Tuesday morning, because everyone does that, right? You know, this was in the days where not sleeping was macho and strong and stupid, and, you know, doing all the things. And then I realized in the moment, and it's a whole long, boring story I'm not going to share with you, but what I learned was, in trying my best, I hated deadlines, not because I couldn't meet them, but because I couldn't keep tweaking something, because it could be a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better. And maybe some of you identify with that feeling that, well, it's done, but I could have improved it just a little bit. And so I kept thinking to do my best, I had to keep doing more and more and more. And I learned from my time off. I took a 6-month sabbatical and then went back actually to a job where I was the CEO of a $1 billion business because I love being a CEO. I thought dropping out meant I had to go goat farm or something, but I didn't. I liked being a CEO. I'm very bossy. I like bossing people around. So just ask my brothers, really. Well, don't ask them, actually. But what I learned is trying my best was enough because there's all these people around to help me. There's all these people who are mentors, who have good ideas, who may not be in my industry, but have an insight into something that makes it, oh yeah, I could use that, and I could be that, and I could add that, and I didn't have to do it myself. There's not a single thing I've done or touched that hasn't been improved by somebody else adding to it. More questions from the room. Jenny.
My question is, what is your definition of success? Because we talk about health, we talk about personal finances, and things changing because your definition of success may have been different 3 years ago versus 10 years ago. So what is your definition of success currently where you are?
Over to you, Lynn. Oh, Cecil, I'm sorry. You know, coffee is how I get through like the first 3 hours of the day, and you can see I haven't had very much. Over to you, Lynn. No, still Cecil. She hasn't changed her name.
I like the name Lynn, though. Success. I wish I could define success. I really do. I almost think that success is something that you see in your rearview mirror, you know, because I honestly feel like I keep focusing on what's ahead, and I keep, you know, taking it bite size, and you know, before you know it, you've passed that moment where you've actually hit success, or you know, whatever it is, like you know, finishing a building project for me, or you know, finishing a book for this one over here. You know, something really tangible might be that marker that you think, oh wow, that was success. Wow, I just passed it, and now I'm on to the next thing. And you know, I don't think I really focus on success. I don't think it's a top priority for me. So I don't know if that's helpful or not, but it's kind of my truth.
Cecil, give it to Joanna. We'll ask all of you to answer that question. It's a great question. Thanks, Jenny.
It is a great question. So I think that success, like balance and some of the other things we're talking about, is fluid, right? And I think that these things are not end goals to our lives. I think that they are things that we move along on a continuum that we try to achieve. And I think that success for me is the day when I wake up, that it's beautiful, that I'm grateful for what I have, and that I'm happy with what I'm doing, right? Because I think that that constant act of trying to have something outside of yourself doesn't really serve us well, right? I think the way that we become really balanced and productive citizens of our community and of our world is to invest in self-care and wellness and do the best that you can do every day. So that's what I think success is.
Great question. Yeah. I think success is a part of like my daily life, you know, whether my daughter just does something amazing and I'm just like, damn, we're doing okay. Or, but basically like going to bed at night feeling like I'm doing something that's I'm proud of and something that's good for the environment, or something that I'm leaving like a little less of negative and a little more of positive, and just being proud of my accomplishments and the people around me. And that's success is every day. You know, every day I wake up and every day I go to bed, and the people I surround myself with, I think success is just a part of life. So.
Thank you, Jenny. Great question. I was actually going to say the exact same thing. Executing on a daily basis, and I think really feeling good about your preparation and knowing that you're going into a chaotic day. You know, I think seasonally, I'm sure a lot of you do, but you know, preparing this time of year and then those 6 months going into each and every day and knowing that both your customers and your employees had a successful day. Everybody worked hard and they're beat up, but they're all really, really happy at the end of the day. And just knowing that you set everyone up in a position to be successful. And, at the end of the day, if it's 8 p.m. or 1 a.m. or whatever it is, knowing that you put everything in place so that you guys could all have the best day that you could. So I think success on a daily level, definitely.
I love to think about the inner landscape and how I feel in my own skin as far as how success feels, because I kind of could relate. Like I was running these businesses in Boston that were really successful, and I felt completely depleted, sort of a dream on every level. And so now I sort of gauge success two ways. Is one, how do I feel internally? Like, can I walk down the street and say hello to someone? Can I hear someone else's pain and be okay with it, or watch their pain and be okay with it and not be afraid of it? And then just being in the shop, I think the thing that I love the most is putting out small fires and small problems that people come in with and are like, I have this. And then it's like, well, what about this? And then someone comes back and goes, oh my God, and I did it and it worked, or, oh, it didn't work. And, sort of dialoguing about that sort of one-on-one. And I had no idea sort of coming into this that it would be like that. But I think that sort of one-on-one, like helping people feel better on like a small individual level, moment by moment. And my meditation teacher calls it like Tonglen on the spot, where you have a moment where someone might be in a great situation or a crisis situation, and you're just in that spot with them. And it's not going to change. You're with them. And I love that. That's sort of my mantra. Yeah. Thanks.
Very cool. Thank you. As I've said before, I ran some companies, and we had employees in India. We had 2,000 employees in India. And when I would go out to visit, I was the CEO, and when I'd go out to do a visit to our Indian location, I would spend the day with the management team, and then our team actually worked at night to work US hours. So I would walk the floors and shake hands of everybody. Hi, how are you? Hi, how are you? Just to say, I see you, you're here, you're processing. And what the work is they did is they paid invoices and they booked travel and those kind of things. So transactional things, small transactional things. One day I'm there and the manager brings over Manesh. And Manesh is in his mid-40s when most of our team is in their mid-20s. And he has a neck brace on. And he said, I want you to meet Manesh. It was a quarter-end close, and he paid 1,800 invoices in a day when normally we ask them to pay 200, and which was astounding. And I said, Manesh, why did you do this? And he said, well, it's a quarter-end close. It was important for our customers. Half our team called in sick, blah, blah, blah. And he said, so I did it. And I said, no, why did you do it? I understand the business reason, but why did you do it? And he said, well, because the big house of Siemens is counting on me. And here I am. I'm the CEO of a billion-dollar business. And here's this man he works in India. It wouldn't have mattered if he didn't do this, really. And yet he took to heart. And I thought in that moment, how do I earn being the leader of people like Manesh? And in that moment, success for me was that I was awake enough to understand that this was something I would cherish the rest of my life. So being able to be in the moment is how I measure my success. So days like today, anything like that, because we're so busy looking ahead, like the bear went over the mountain, okay, we do that, and it's okay, because we have to plan, we have to do stuff. But when you get to be in the moment and have these kind of aha moments, it's just very cool. Now I'm going to branch out. Oh, yes, good, great question.
Hello, Ann Kuspa. I have a question to the panel. I just want to hear your reflections about gender roles on Nantucket. I also agree there are a lot of strong women here, and I appreciate that. But I also hear how it's uncommon to have, when you're a business owner, you're going and you can't get the backing because you don't have the male behind you. Or how great is it that I'm a woman CEO? Or we have 2 finance committee members here, and it's unusual. So, I also see I'm a nonprofit worker, very gender safe. So I kind of want to think about the balance of that. And do we need to overcompensate, or I don't know. I just want to hear reflections about gender roles here.
Great question, Anne. Thank you. Who would like to start with that?
So someone came into the shop one time and started talking about something with people, bathrooms and being transgendered. So I'm going to start from that angle. And I said to the person, if you can tell me what gender is, then let's have a discussion. So I think the thing is that sometimes we as women try to fit into a certain role as a woman, and then as a man, they're trying to fit into a certain role. And I think we're at the point where we need to just say that is not realistic. And because we all have feminine and masculine aspects to us. And I think it only creates a hampering, because I may hire someone that has much more feminine traits than me, and they're filling that role, which I know sounds like super weird, but in my world of philosophy, I think you really have to be open-minded about it. And I think for so long, we've been like trying to fit into roles. And every time someone said no, because I was a woman, I would get more determined. That would be like the firewood in my fireplace. So I think sometimes as women, we have to step outside and say, if we set the precedence to say whether it matters or not. And so if we keep saying it matters, people are going to put it as a matter, but it shouldn't even be on the docket. That would be my argument.
I think gender roles for Nantucket specifically has been kind of fascinating, right? You grow up and there's female landscaping crews who do certain things and male landscaping crews who do certain things. Certainly, I work in a extremely male-dominated industry, not only people-wise, but attitude-wise. It's a very male-dominated what we do every day. So I think what, from my role personally, would be more from an observational front. I'm not sure if I feel one way or another about it, or if I really had the luxury for that, because we just kind of had to go for it. I think that, I guess my question to answer your question would be, is that changing? You know, are the landscaping crews the same? Are people moving into different roles? Not really sure. We'll have to keep an eye on that.
This is kind of hard for me because most of my professional career has been here. And I've basically been an owner of a salon since I was professional. And it's a very female-dominating role, just a company in general. And we every year, I'm like, we really need a guy in here, guys. And the girls are like, it never works. And I'm like, come on, let's just give him a shot. He's like, his resume sucks. I'm like, we really need a guy in here. So for us, it's kind of like, it's definitely something we strive to create that balance, because I love having a balance of male and female. I always feel like, especially on this island, that the men really look up to us, and they love the women here. They respect the women here. So I've never had that problem, and I wish I did. I want to feel this like a little bit more like a female dominant kind of personality, but I respect the fact that that I don't, like, not yet. And maybe it's because it's going away. I know that statistically it's not. I know that men are still getting paid more than women, but I think that we're not turning a blind eye on it, and we're going forward and we're making progress, and it's not in an aggressive, nasty way. It's just the natural progression of things. We are strong. Women are doing a lot, and it's not an issue that is constantly happening in society right now that I'm aware of. And other parts of the world maybe, but I think in especially the Northeast, we're doing pretty good. So yeah, I definitely feel like it's something that every different business has to deal with differently. But me professionally, I had someone who transitioned from a male to a female in my business. And what does that mean? Like, same respect for me. It doesn't change the way they treat a woman or a man. It's just so convoluted. I don't really know how to understand it, but I just respect it. Like if someone has an issue with it, I want to hear what it is. I want to understand because I haven't experienced it in my lifetime. Not really. Is that strange? That I haven't? It is? You're lucky. Yeah.
I think I probably have a couple different answers to that question. Because women make 70 cents on the dollar, right? But we make 85% of all consumer purchases and decisions. So we have control of the pocketbook on one hand, but we don't make as much money as men. And I think I was probably 30 the first time I was passed over for a job, which was a general manager job, and a man was chosen. And we had the same qualifications, but he was a guy, right? So I think that, now that was a while ago, but I do think that it taught me a lesson. It taught me to not care, because I think that in order to move beyond those things, we have to hold ourselves to the higher standard in terms of the discrimination piece. And to your point, yes, Denise and I are the only two women on a board of all men. Do I feel weird about that? Nope. Do I care? Nope. Right? My opinion is just as important as everybody else there. And I think that when we hold ourselves equal to everybody else, then we get that equality back. And so I think that, here on Nantucket, we might be, to Daria's point, a little more sheltered from what's happening in the bigger corporate world. But, discrimination is subtle. And, we are in this place in society where men's roles are really changing. And I know this because I'm raising two boys. And if you're a working mom, you're doing an hour and a half more work a day than your partner in your home just because you're a woman, right? So how I talk to my children, and particularly my sons, about this is that, you got to learn to do the laundry. You got to learn to clear the table, right? Because you're going to be good husbands someday. And I think that that's how we change sort of how you look at gender roles, right? Is you put emphasis on the value of the work in terms of partnership.
Oh, wow. This is such a hard question. It really, really is. Thank you, Anne, for asking it. I was in high school in the 70s, and that was a totally different time for women. And one of my very first jobs, you guys are all going to laugh because this is going to make me sound like a dinosaur, was actually running stock certificates from investment cage to investment cage. And I bet half of you don't have any idea what I'm talking about. But, before the time when you traded stocks over the internet, you literally had to deliver stock certificates from one office to another office if they were being bought and sold, so these were bond and stock certificates. So my very first peak, and I was in my early teens in this job, 14 to 16 age. And I was working alongside 70-year-old men who had retired from trading on the stock exchange floor. And they were also, delivering stock certificates alongside me. So I was this tiny little girl in a very male-dominated world. But I'd been raised by a father, and and I say that not without love for my mom, but my mom moved to the UK when I was a teenager, so I lived in my dad's house. And he raised me to say, you can do anything. You can do it. If you want to be a stockbroker, gosh darn it, you can be a stockbroker. But if you want to be something else, then it's time for you to decide what you want to do. And so I've had experiences, definitely have had experiences where men have told me that I can't do something because I'm a mom, or I can't do something because, I don't have enough time to give, or I don't drink hard enough, or whatever, But I think the most, the hardest, it's okay. I mean, in some ways for me, it's okay when someone else tells me I can't do something. But the thing that I really have to guard against is when I tell myself I can't do something. And that's much harder. So some of these psychological things that have been planted in me because I was a child going to school in the 60s and 70s, they're still there. And there's still things that I have to listen to and reject, or take ownership of. Sometimes I just have to cut myself some slack because some of those comments perk up every now and then that I'm not good at math or I'm not good at whatever. And that's really hard, and I have to work at being nice to myself on that front. So that I think is really important to remember. Yeah.
Thank you, sis. What I loved about everyone's answers is that they found their own way to say, this is what this means to me. This is the context. This is what I can or cannot change. And here's how I'm going to cope. And, at the bottom line, it comes down to self-awareness. And as I always tell my husband, I'm hugely self-aware, but please don't confuse that with willingness to change. It's not the same thing. Sorry, I just want to give it to Christy.
I just have a question about career transitions, and kind of historically you kind of entered a career and you stay on that trajectory, and now you're seeing people become investment bankers and then leaving that to become a baker or something like that. So for anybody here that's done a career transition, what motivated you, and what advice would you have somebody who's thinking about taking that jump?
Lynn, I think I'll start with you because that's how we started before.
Okay. Yeah, I did. Let's see, in 2016, I did a big career change. I had 2 yoga studios in Boston. And I think one of the motivators a little bit behind some of the change was that my health and just sort of like my overall perspective. And then my whole identity was that career, because when I opened, we were like the first yoga studio that opened in the city. And when I ended that, I took sort of a little bit of a break from teaching. And it was sort of like a stripping down of identity where I felt sort of depressed and not sort of knowing, like, I sort of went into this existential inquiry of like, who am I? And like, I didn't want to do any of the stuff that I had done before. And people started like questioning that. And I think that probably was one of the most helpful things, but it can be very destabilizing in terms of you have this root chakra of like, that's Lynn and she owns Back Bay Yoga and she does this. And then it was like, oh no, I don't do any of that. And so being comfortable with beginning again. In meditation, we're always a beginner. So beginner's mind, Zen mind, beginner's mind. It's painfully humbling. I feel that on a daily basis. And I'm in my wheelhouse because I've been doing yoga and studying herbal things for 20 years. And if I count pot smoking, it'd go way deeper than that into high school. I went to an all-girls school, but the boys had all the good weed. But 20 years ago, I started with Chinese herbal medicine, and every day is brand new for my learning. And I think that's why I love it. So, you have to make a fool of yourself again and again and just stay in beginner's mind. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Lynn. Carolyn, you had a question?
Oh, yes. I know you're all talking about the big picture of success, but I was curious on a daily level. You try to achieve like these little increments of success every day. And sometimes you'll overextend yourself. You don't realize it. When you get to that point where you have overextension, do you have specific techniques that you use in mindfulness that help you to rebalance yourself?
Thank you. Tracy, I'll start with you.
Certainly for me personally, we've touched on routine. Lynn's touched on meditation, and something that really changed for me to be able to deal with those things was meditating in the morning. It's not necessarily in that specific instance, is that you've done things before then to prepare. And if you adhere to your routine, whether or not you're traveling internationally, you have jet lag, or you just have an insane day, you can't really be thrown off if you've already gone through your routine, and you can't get ruffled to the point where you let that thing make you react in a way that you don't want to. Reacting to a person, or they were speaking to how Daria can have the longest day, and if you run into her, she's so nice and awesome. It doesn't matter like what time of the day, and it's amazing. It really is. It's super cool. And you have these expectations for yourself, and I'm trying to bridge the gap between someone else's experience beside my own. But if you take someone's kid's fake ID and they flip out at you, you don't have to flip out back at them. You're like, no, this is a federal law, actually. So, but, getting it, preparing before that moment is what I would say.
Yeah, the morning like that. Sure. I definitely agree, like preparing yourself mentally every day for what could come. And everyone, it depends on if you have a big project coming up or if you just have like a normal day, which I haven't had in a long time. You just kind of look at yourself and you say, if this is going to be a fantastic day. And if it's not, this day ends. And tomorrow's another freaking fantastic day. And like every day, it's like, this is gonna end. And my problems are like minute in comparison to the world out there and what's going on. And you put it in perspective, and that's how I live.
Thank you. I agree. I'll have all of you answer that. Just in case, are there more questions? Yay! In fact, I was just going to do this. I was going to say, because it's International Women's Day, it does not mean men cannot ask questions here.
Hi, I'm Dave Gagnon with the Mariah Mitchell Association. We just put on a conference, the Mariah Mitchell Women in Science Symposium, back in October. And one of the facts that came out that really has stuck with all of us is that about 50% of the people involved with science education during college are women. And by the time you get into the business side or the academic side in the careers, only 27% are women at that point, and very, very few actually in leadership positions. So I'm curious, like looking at it from a 30,000-foot level, what do you think some of the solutions are in our society to try to get that number to get up there and get that diversity and leadership that you're talking about?
Thank you. I'm going to jump the head of the queue because I've got the microphone yet again. You can't be what you can't see. And it's the more we publicize role models, the more we publicize women scientists. I remember when I was first a CEO, I was one of the few women CEOs in Siemens worldwide. And so it was of a smaller company. It wasn't of the whole company. But when I got burnt out and left, so many women came up to me and said, well, you can't leave. You're the only one. And you take on more than you are, unfortunately. So how do we promote the role models and yet support them? Because sometimes being the role model is exhausting.
I was just going to say, not quite what you said, but the beginning, the first line, you can't be what you can't see. And I think that is, I've really thought about that, especially raising 3 girls, that kids growing up on Nantucket, what do they imagine they can be? Landscapers, builders, real estate brokers, teachers, things that they really tangibly can understand. I understand what that job is because I see it. I think it's harder for kids growing up on Nantucket to imagine themselves working, say, in the investment world or running a company like Denise did. So, I think exposing, if we can somehow or other expose girls to opportunities that are outside of their day-to-day experience, then that's how they can start imagining themselves being something else. And I don't quite know what, 30,000 feet the solution would be, but to me, that I think is one of the pieces that has to happen. Girls and women and boys have to imagine themselves being that thing that they want to be or that you want them to be. Yeah. As a society, want them to be, not me. Yeah.
Joanna, do you want to also have a...
It's a good question. I think things are changing, right? I think that, things are sort of breaking down because I think that sort of the older generation of men who hired those positions, right? Though that gender gap and that dynamic is changing. And I think as we go down, more women will come up. But I do agree with everything that you guys said. You have to see what you can see. And I think exposing particularly children to all different kinds of career options and paths and not defining what that looks like for them is really important. Letting them make their choices.
Thank you. Brandon?
Thank you. We have a number of experts here in the health and wellness field on Nantucket. I was wondering if you could just maybe comment about what do you think is sort of most relevant in the health and wellness scene on Nantucket right now?
Start with Joanna, and then we'll go over to. I'll start with Lynn. Like how I did that.
Alexandra, that has the Healing School and Center, is organizing a wellness crawl and brought together a bunch of us to sort of brainstorm around it. And she's working on that. And I think what's happening that I see in the wellness world on Nantucket is that sort of a lot of crossover and then sort of an expansion of what we consider wellness. So when I started teaching yoga, it was just physical, what we call asana postures, right? Sun salutations and things like this. And now people are starting to understand wellness in a broader term. I went to Alexandra's sound bowl and healing shamanic journey. And I'm like, this is what I've done so much physical stuff. Like I can't go in a gym anymore. So I think there's a lot more spiritual aspect on the island here than I've seen almost in LA, or other real Mecca places for spiritual study, which oddly enough, LA is one of those. So I think that's probably one of the main things, is that there's an expansion of consciousness that exists here. And that expansion may be because of the expansion of being on the island, that we literally are in this open space, and it lends itself to that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have 3 minutes left. Melissa, you've been waving your arm at me so much. So Joanna, I'm going to have to skip you on that. Thank you, Lynn.
I wanted to just say one thing. I'm not on the panel, but I wanted to just add to what David said in the response that maybe we didn't get to hear. But I think men play such a huge role in creating leadership opportunities for women. And I think Ruth Bader Ginsburg talked about how, she couldn't have done what she did if her husband wasn't her equal partner at home. And so I think, to Joanna's point of raising boys to be men who value their role as equal partners at home is huge. And that's how we start to change the dynamic in how companies are being led, so that we really are embracing the whole family, the whole unit, and what that shared responsibility is to raise the next generation. But my question was, no. I just want to hear about failure. One question?
No, you don't get a question. I am militant about timekeeping. I'm sorry. Militant. No, we only have 2 minutes. And we have a wrap up. You'll have to go up and talk to them after. I'm so sorry. So before we finish, because we have literally 2 minutes left, Ruth Bader Ginsburg also said something else very clever, which was when they said, how many women on the Supreme Court are enough? She said, when it's 9. Right? And to that, I'd like to give a shout out to the 3 women that are in the room who are running for select board. Please stand up. And just to close, thank you all for being here. You've been fabulous. And I think Margaret Mead sums it up better I get all emotional at this part. I think Margaret Mead sums it up better than anyone else, which is never doubt that a small group of committed people can change the world. It is the only thing that ever has. Thank you. Thank you to the panelists for a fantastic event.
Also tonight, in collaboration with One Book, One Island, we're doing a panel of entrepreneurs in the Great Hall. So it's at 5:30 if you guys want to come. And then otherwise, thank you all for coming today.
Arts Association is still having a show from the One Book, One Island. It runs till Monday.
Okay.
I'm just